Sheneika Dabney-Henderson is one of the most inspirational women in the world of sports media. You know her currently as the vice president of production with the Saints and Pelicans, formerly of NFL Network, started in local television, and we're going to learn about her story and what makes her inspirational and really get to know how she's been able to carve out the success she has been able to. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is the On to Something podcast. I work with Fox Sports Radio. Sheneika, is so grateful for your time. I know you've got three kiddos running around, so I'll make this. We'll get this in as quickly as possible. But when you look at your career path, then starting out in local television and then stops at the NFL Network and what you're doing in the NFL/the NBA, when you reimagine the steps you took, what are you fighting for, and how you've been able to do this, and what pushes you?
I think I'm pushed by and fighting for all of the me's that are out there who didn't have a pathway, into sports, or didn't even have a pathway into sports leadership. And, I think about the fact that I was the first college graduate in my family. No one in my circle knew about sports TV or production or journalism or anything like that. And so I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. Now, I had a great support system, but I didn't have a blueprint. So I didn't even know that I wanted to be in sports, to be honest with you. I knew that I was passionate about journalism and about writing. And I just sort of figured it out through process of elimination and realizing what I didn't want to do. And that ultimately led me to what I did want to do. And so one of my big priorities now is to make myself accessible as much as I can to the next generation, the next crop of people, and starting even younger than college. I want to make myself accessible to kids in high school. I want them to know that I exist, and I want them to know that it's possible for them. And I don't want them to have to figure it all out on their own.
One of the great ventures that you are a part of, one of the many, is with the HBCUs and your contributions in helping students get that step into the business. And if we go back to when you were a child, and I see this go-getter mindset about you, and oftentimes we witness people when we're young, and that's how we gain the foundation of who we are. Who did you see when you were young that helped sort of ingrain in you that go-getter mentality that we have seen that has been so critical to your success all these years and what you're doing now?
Well, it started with my parents. There's no bigger go-getters on the face of the planet than those two. They had three girls, and they busted their butts to make sure that we, did the best that we could, and exposed us to as much as they could with the resources that they had. So they were the first step in just laying that foundation. But then I would go to some of the mentors that I had early on. I'm thinking about my college professor, Lisa Martin, once I got a little bit older. I'm thinking about, let me even backtrack to 8th grade, my principal at my Catholic school, Sister Maeve, who took me aside and told me she thought I was a strong writer, and advocated for me and pushed me and told me, like, don't settle for anything less than what I know that you're capable of. And when you're a little girl, you're 12, you're 13, and someone is taking interest in you and telling you, like, saying the words out loud of you can literally do anything that you want to do, I think people really underestimate the impact that has. I think it's easy to make an assumption that kids just sort of like are absorbing the world around them, and they feel like they can do it because that's kind of the general messaging that the world might be putting out. But to have someone take the time to pull you aside and say that you can do that, that resonates on a much different level. My 5th grade teacher, Miss Williams, who invested so much time in me. And then, like I said, moving into my professional career, Norman Robinson, a local anchor here, Nancy Parker, was instrumental. She's one of the premier Black anchor women here, took me under her wing when I was an intern. She passed away recently, and I always think about just the legacy that she left behind in all of the women that she poured into while she was here. And I think about that, and I know that I better be doing the same thing, or I'm doing a disservice, not just to her, but to all these other people who have played some role, even if it's on the smallest level, in pushing me to keep doing more, but making sure that I keep looking back and pulling people along with me.
Sheneika Dabney-Henderson is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. Among those who you positively impact would be your three kids. What strength do they give you, Sheneika, in that you take with you into work in what you do?
Well, I've got two boys and a little girl, and a lot of times people will frame the question of, how important do you think it is to be a woman in sports for your daughter? And I always say it's important. It's just as important for my sons. I want all three of them to see a woman in leadership, a female boss, a female executive. They see me on calls, they see me having to lead meetings. They have a loose understanding, but at least some understanding of the fact that I work in the sports realm, and they recognize at their very young ages that sports traditionally are male dominated. And so I think even though they may not be putting all the pieces together, it resonates with them on some level. And I don't shield them from anything. I want them to be exposed to it. When they see me, where I let them know if I'm doing something, like, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. I think it's really important for both little boys and little girls to understand that women can be in charge, that women can be in male dominated spaces, and that women can thrive in those environments. And then most importantly, I like to expose them to the other women that I work with, because I want them to see positive female relationships in the workplace. It's not this stereotype of cattiness and backbiting. The women that I work with, we are all empowering and uplifting each other. And so I try to expose that to them as well as best I can. It's gotten a little trickier in this COVID environment, but as best I can, I want them to know, like, yeah, Miss Swin Cash, she's an executive with the Pelicans, and she and I talk every day and we work together on projects. And I want you to see that that's who I'm having this call with, so that you have this understanding at a very early age that there are women in charge and women working together to get stuff done.
Speaking of another woman who you've had a profound impact on, and this goes back to your NFL Network days, is Aditi Kinkhabwala. And I see that she's got this elephant picture whenever she does live hits, I'm assuming from her house. And there's some significance to this, because if I'm not mistaken, Sheneika, you gave her an elephant card. And what to you and for you does an elephant symbolize?
So Aditi, she and I were among the few at the network who were working moms, and at the time at least. And we would talk a lot, when we had those opportunities to see each other in person, and just kind of have a, like, oh my God, this is exhausting moment. And, one of those talks just resonated with me, and I understood what she was going through, and I understood how alone she felt in that moment. And I wanted her to know that she's not alone, that a tribe of women are there with her, and that even those moments of failure that she might be feeling, I wanted her to know that even with those, she is still such a positive example to her kids. She's an accomplished woman. She's a strong woman. And so I was just online, and I saw this cool, it was this like elephant charm, and it had a card that came with it. And it talked about how, how in the elephant world, with the mother elephant, how the strength of the mother elephant. And it really played into exactly what she and I had been talking about. And so I sent it to her, and I didn't think that it would touch her as much as it did, but she's brought it up a couple of times about how, she'll either read that card or she'll look at the charm. And now she's got the picture of the elephant behind her in her live shots. And it's just one of those things where, you hear all the time, like, you never know what somebody's going through, and how you being really nice to them can have an impact, or you being like crappy to them, the impact that it can have. And so it's easier for me to think about, how can I positively impact someone, even if I don't know the full depths of what you're going through. Even a little bitty gesture like that, which was like, boop, put it in the mail and never think about it, how something like that can resonate on a much deeper level with somebody and get them through something. And so, I'm thankful to have just a tribe of really amazing women that I've been able to work with. And we have all been that for each other at different points over the course of our career.
And like you said, in having to be a mom in this process adds another layer to the challenges of doing your job at such a high level. Where do you feel like, Sheneika, you have had to display the greatest amount of resilience when it comes to your career? When there was a moment where it would have been great to get a card like the one that you gave,
Mhm.
and the way in which you were able to rise above that, you can still recall to this day.
Well, it's very recent. um, COVID and dealing with COVID and dealing with all of my kids who are very young, being at home at the same time, the uncertainty of being in a global pandemic and not knowing, what's happening and when it's going to end, and you're scared for your family and you're scared for your kids. You're trying to work, you're trying to be a teacher, you're still being a mother, you're still being a wife. I would say the fall of 2020 was one of the toughest stretches of my life. I had only been back in New Orleans for about a year at that point. Um, I was working from home. My husband was working from home. My kids were doing virtual school. I had what was at that point a 1-year-old, 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and it was just like there were definitely moments where I would end a Zoom meeting and just burst into tears. Like, what am I doing? Because I'm on this meeting, and then I've also got a kid doing virtual class who's like over there raising their hand for me to help, and I can't stop and help them. And you feel like you're kind of failing at everything. And that was what I was feeling in that moment. And I think it really took, and I'll say that I still sometimes have those moments of feeling completely overwhelmed, but I would say that it just took a shift in perspective and in realizing that like you don't have to be winning and getting an A in everything. Like if you got to put something on the back burner today to help to make sure you're doing okay, and that's okay. Like you don't have to be killing it on every facet every single day. And I had to talk. I've always been very ambitious, and I've always wanted to, especially I had just started my job. Like I didn't want to disappoint them. I felt like they put a lot of faith in me. I wanted to be the best employee I could be. I wanted to be the best mom and the best wife and all of these things. And then it was like, okay, just take it easy. Maybe you're going to kill it at work today. Maybe you're going to suck at work today and you'll be an amazing mom today. And that is totally okay. Because if you are trying to succeed at everything at the same time, you can lose yourself in that process. And that's what I felt myself slipping away. I really did. And I really had to just take a moment to reset. And one of probably the most monumental moments over the course of all that was I lost someone who was really close to me. I lost my nephew unexpectedly. And your perspective shifts, right? About what is important and what should you be doing with your life. And you realize just how short and fragile life is. So should you spend it freaking out every moment about doing everything perfectly? Or should you really just be investing in living life and enjoying the moments that you have? So I'd say that era in my life is something that I'll never forget. And it's something that when I feel myself getting overwhelmed, that I say, I'm not going to go back down that slippery slope. We're not going down that road again. We're going to take a moment. If you got to take 2 moments, if you got to take 3 moments, do what you need to do for you. Because if you fall apart, then the whole deck of cards is going to collapse.
As like when you're on an airplane and they say, when the mouthpiece oxygen
Mhm.
comes down, help yourself and then help everybody
Yes.
around you. And in the shift of perspective for you, in the way in which you're guiding through so many things and family and the rigors of work and putting on great content, how has your husband been there in times of need for you, in moments where he's really come into a quality moment in your life where you needed a backbone and he delivered?
Oh man, there's so many. That's a good dude. He is so good. He is that, people say like you have the voice in your head. He's the voice outside of my head who's like, are you kidding me? Like, are you serious? Do you realize you don't have to be doing all these things? Order the pizza. Like, we don't need to cook. Order the pizza. It's fine. Do this, do that. Like, he's always there to ground me when either I'm feeling sorry for myself or I'm just, like going down a slippery slope of you're not doing this, you're not doing, and he's like, you don't have to be everything to everybody at all times. You just don't. You're not doing this alone. We're in a partnership for a reason. I even think about just yesterday, I opened up Instagram and he had put up a post about me serving as a chairperson for the committee for the HBCU Legacy Bowl. And his post was just about like him having a sense of admiration for me taking on something that I was passionate about and why I took it on and the work that he sees me doing. And like, I didn't ask him to do that. I didn't know he was doing it. I just opened it up and saw it. And he just does stuff like that all the time to be like, you know what, you may not want to give yourself credit for stuff, but I'm going to do it for you. You may not want to pat yourself on the back and say, atta girl, I'm going to do it for you. When we got married, I remember saying he was my biggest cheerleader. And it is true. It holds up to this day. Like I cannot sing his praises enough because he is definitely someone who is always, always consistently there to tell me like, you're not giving yourself enough credit, but I'm going to give you all the credit because I see it. I see you up at night at 1 a.m. I see the things you do for our kids. I see you running around, you're remembering everybody's birthday and all this stuff. Like you're doing all that stuff and you're not giving yourself any credit for it. You're just kind of floating around, going from this spot to the other one. Let me stop you for a second. Look me in my eyes and let me tell you, you are killing it, even if you don't feel like you are. I'm about to start crying.
Well, the more he says that, the more I'm sure it'll start to be ingrained in your mind. I think if he says it over and over again, Sheneika, you're going to be like, okay, I get it. You're right. And you give yourself more credit than maybe you initially would. I got one more question. Sheneika Dabney-Henderson is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley as we're running through some really neat stories about her life and what makes her inspirational. And this is the On to Something podcast. So that unsolicited compliment you got from your husband meant the world to you. In looking at your purpose in this life, where do you get, on top of what your husband did, where do you get the most validation for what you do? And where does that come from?
Wow, that's a really good question. I would say a lot of times I just get random people who I've never met who will reach out to me over LinkedIn and they'll say something like, just knowing that you exist, seeing what you do pushes me to do it or lets me know that I can do it. And this was a moment that I'm going to remember this moment forever. I was working the Super Bowl, but in LA. I hadn't gone to the game in San Francisco, but working it from the office. I was pregnant at the time and I was working late. I had to go pick up my son, who was maybe 1, picked him up from daycare, brought him back to the office with me. I'm still working. And this young woman, Katya, she came into my office. She just kind of poked her head in and she was like, "You're still here?" And I said, "Yeah, I was finishing up some stuff." And she was like, "Your son's here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I went to go pick him up from daycare." And she was like, "I just want you to know, I have always felt like I can't have a family and be in this business. And I see you doing it every day." She was like, "You find a way to make it work. You just do it. And you make it look like effortless. Like, boom, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that." And I hadn't even thought, I'm just kind of like living my life, doing my thing. But it's those types of moments where I feel like there is a purpose here. And maybe I'm not doing this perfectly and I'm having these like freak out moments because I don't really have any like basis of comparison, but I'm setting hopefully a positive example of, back then it was like, yeah, you can make it work, you can manage it. And now my goal is to be a positive example of boundaries. And hey, sometimes maybe you got to have that day off, or you got to, tell your boss you're coming in late, or you got to leave early. You got to set those boundaries for yourself. Like that is what I'm hoping. And I feel like I am, because I'm getting that feedback and that's what keeps pushing me. But I'm hoping that I can keep using, how I operate and function in these spaces to inspire other men and women. And, when they come back to me and they give me that feedback, it fuels me. It lets me know like, girl, you are doing something right. Like, you are helping someone on some level, like something passively is getting through to them or directly is getting through to them by you telling them that it's okay to not be juggling it all at the same time. So yeah, like I love that personal validation that I get from my husband because he means the world to me. But when I get these just random moments of thank you or what you're doing is inspiring me, like that stuff hits me in the feels pretty good too.
I'm getting the feels from hearing you get the feels about telling that story and knowing you and how many professional athletes that you are working with and are around all the time. Athletes like that, they have countless number of supporters who they don't even know are out there. But it's not just athletes, it's what you do as well. And like you said, when there are moments where maybe the day isn't great, things are happening at home, there's always somebody who's looking up to us. And as you've been pointing out, that we might not know, but now hearing that, it gives you that extra that extra drive to take it into the next gear. And you certainly are doing that with the Pelicans and Saints. Sheneika Dabney-Henderson, this has been so much fun. Really appreciate you telling your story. I'm Bryan Fenley.
Thanks, Brian.